Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did an interview with Chris Cuomo on CNN, and he decided to pelt her with right-wing and establishment talking points. The issue here, as you're about to see, but I'll explain after the clip, it's all in the framing. Take a look.
And look beyond gender. We talk about getting ahead of ourselves. We should be focusing on gender very much, but they won. And if you look at why the women won, almost to a person, they were much closer to the center and the traditional Democratic views than what we're seeing with some of the other new crops, you included. Do you think that that is a reflection about how much change your party can take and how soon, that more of those candidates are winning because they're hewing more closely to traditional Democratic standards?
Well, I think you have to take a look at two things, where the American people are at and then also what wins campaigns. And it's no secret that while grassroots campaigns absolutely have their place and are very strong in voter turnout when they are able to turn out voters, money does win elections. And so when you have PAC groups that are able to pour in $500,000 to $1 million per race, that absolutely makes an impact. However, nothing changes the fact that the majority of Americans believe and approve of Medicare for all, single-payer health care. 74% of Democrats believe in Medicare for all. So I think that the electorate and the American people are very clear about what they value and what they want. But at the same time, we do live in an environment where money and unlimited money wins a lot of elections. And so when you have organizations that are able to, write a blank check, that absolutely has an impact in races. But I think what we do know is that we are winning really hearts and minds, and we are winning an American consensus on where we are going for our future.
You know, there's that expression in journalism that the truth, that democracy dies in darkness. You need the light of truth. It dies in dark money also. If you could get dark money out, and you can't, because the Supreme Court was really clear on it, and I'll have to see if this court sees it any differently. I'm not sure that it would. Dark money, 100%, that is a nonpartisan issue. Then you get into the partisan issue of money, which is, man, do you want to spend a lot of my tax money on these proposals that you and Bernie and others have? Medicare for all, college tuition, maybe even housing, that the Green New Deal that you have, it is all very expensive, especially on the single payer side, and that it gives people sticker shock. Even in Bernie's home state, they got sticker shock. They couldn't get it done in his state because of how expensive it is. And that was an 11% increase in taxes, 9 to 11%. Even that was too much for people. How do you pay? How do you sell it?
So first of all, the thing that we need to realize is people talk about the sticker shock of Medicare for all. They do not talk about the sticker shock of the cost of our existing system. In a Koch brothers funded study, if any study is going to try to be a little bit slanted, it would be one funded by the Koch brothers. It shows that Medicare for all is actually much cheaper than the current system that we pay right now. And let's not forget that the reason that the Supreme Court upheld the Affordable Care Act is because they ruled that each of these monthly payments that everyday Americans make is a tax. And so while it may not seem like we pay that tax on April 15th, we pay it every single month, or we do pay a tax season if we don't buy, these plans off of the exchange. So we're paying for this system. We Americans have the sticker shock of healthcare as it is. And what we're also not talking about is why aren't we incorporating the cost of all the funeral expenses of those who die because they can't afford access to healthcare? That is part of the cost of our system. Why don't we talk about the cost of reduced productivity because of people who need to go on disability, because of people who are not able to participate in our economy, because they're having issues like diabetes or they don't have access to the health care that they need. I think at the end of the day, we see that this is not a pipe dream. Every other developed nation in the world does this. Why can't America? And that is the question that we need to ask. We have done these things before. We write unlimited blank checks for war. We just wrote a $2 trillion check for that tax cut, the GOP tax cut, and nobody asked those folks how are they going to pay for it. So my question is, why is it that our pockets are only empty when it comes to education and health care for our kids? Why are our pockets only empty when we talk about 100% renewable energy that is going to save this planet and allow our children to thrive? We only have empty pockets when it comes to the morally right things to do. But when it comes to tax cuts for billionaires and when it comes to unlimited war, we seem to be able to invent that money very easily. And to me, it belies a lack of moral priorities that people have right now, especially the Republican Party.
Yeah, she did very well there. And Chris Cuomo should be ashamed of himself because he just put on a masterclass in establishment bullshit. And listen, I don't think he did it on purpose. I think that he has adopted that framework as his actual framework of reference. I think that the way he asked those questions, it's already embedded in his mind that what do you mean? These are just a given. Like, my framing here is just a given. This isn't biased. This isn't pro-establishment. This isn't a right-wing framing. But as I'm about to explain to you and break down for you, it is exactly that. And infuriatingly so. So, from the beginning, notice that very first question there. He says, well, gender aside, and we shouldn't put gender aside because it was all women who won. Yeah, so many women won. He says, well, the reason why these women won is because they were more moderate establishment candidates. So, see what he did there? He hit two establishment talking points in one. One of them was, we are, the establishment, we are actually so progressive. In fact, we're maybe even more progressive than you, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Why? Because I back women. I'm in favor of the women. I believe in gender equality. I'm so progressive. So progressive. So, in other words, McFeminism, yet again. McFeminism. It's the bastardization of identity politics for cynical ends. Those ends being serving the status quo and moderation, which, by the way, the status quo is actually not moderate, so it's extreme. It's extreme in a right-wing direction. It's extremely biased in favor of the moneyed interests. But it's a way that they get to say, hey, I'm leftier than thou, even though I am literally not when you look at the policies, but I'm going to pat myself on the back and pat the establishment on the back by saying, oh, we're so enlightened because we have more women candidates. See? So shouldn't we all only care about identity, and shouldn't we care, just about surface bullshit because that's the way you're more liberal, even though we want to serve the establishment with those diverse faces. So, and then the second part of that is establishment candidates. He's like flat out saying it, like, oh yeah, they're more establishment. So isn't that the way to go? Because so many establishment candidates won. Now, notice something. Anytime establishment candidates lose, they never say it is because they are establishment candidates. And that philosophy, that ideology doesn't sell. Never. Whenever an establishment candidate loses, to them, it's a fluke, it's a one-off, it's not indicative of a larger trend. Now, flip the script. Whenever it's the opposite, it's because of their ideology that they won. Oh, an establishment candidate won. It's obviously because people love the establishment. It's got to be because they love the establishment. So, in other words, it didn't even occur to Chris Cuomo the obviously correct point that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez made, which is, it's the money, dipshit. Every time an establishment candidate wins, it's because they flooded the airwaves with ads, they had more money, they got their name out there more, so people probably didn't even know about the left-wing candidate. And the other instances in which the establishment candidate wins, it's because there could be some genuine vote splitting on the left, like what happened with Abdul El Sayed and what's his face? I forget his name already. Fanadar in Michigan. So there was genuine vote splitting because there were two left-wing candidates and one establishment candidate. So the left-wing vote was split, and then the establishment candidate won. And Fanadar, by the way, was a fucking liar, and that's the problem with him. Not that he was in the race, it's that he's a fucking liar and he was in the race. Because he's not actually left-wing. He was a Republican, but he ran as like a Bernie Sanders-style Democrat. So, I mean, look at that. It's always, if the establishment wins, it's always because they're brilliant and because that's what people want. When the left wins, it's a fluke, it's a one-off, it doesn't count. That's effectively what he's saying. Now, he's also just wrong on the facts here. Why? There were 12 Our Revolution candidates that won, and at least 6 Justice Democrats that won, including female Justice Democrat candidates. Tlaib is one example. Sarah Smith is another example. So there you go. 2 female candidates who are Justice Democrats, and he's got nothing to say about them. Nothing to say about them. In fact, they don't count. You didn't do well, did you, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Sure, your side is all grassroots funded, is at a giant money disadvantage. It's harder to get the name out there, but you didn't do well because you're not as popular as the establishment. There were over 1,000 seats that were lost under Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi. And they never acknowledge that and say, hey, maybe people hate the establishment. Donald Trump won running an anti-establishment message against the most establishment candidate ever. He never said, hey, maybe people hate the establishment. Never happened. Jesus Christ. And then, okay. Then we get to, she talks about money in politics, and what's his response? Well, okay, yeah, but when you get dark money out, I guess that's a good thing, but you can't get it out because that's what the Supreme Court said. And then it's an even more contentious issue to say we should get all money out. Contentious among who, Chris? Yes, among your circle that you run in with other rich assholes that make too much money on TV. It's contentious in your circles. It is not at all contentious among the American people. In fact, depending on what poll you look at, it's over 80% or over 90% of the American people that want money out of politics. Not just dark money. Dark money means people who donate, but and corporations and billionaires who donate, but they get to hide their name and just give the money so you don't know who's giving to who. But dark money is not the problem. See, this was the Hillary Clinton's old trick. It was like, we need to make sure we get dark, unaccountable money out of politics. And everybody, every gullible person would go, oh, yes, that's so true, so great. Why did you add the words dark and unaccountable? Because what Hillary's saying is we need more transparency. So our politicians should be bought off, but we should know who's buying them off. That was her position. Money in politics is fine. Just let me know who's buying who off. That's supposed to be the position that's supposed to be on the left. Oh, please. The real left-wing position is clean elections, publicly financed elections. Get all the private money out of the system. Not the dark, unaccountable money, the private money, the money, period. So look at that framing. The framing is naive, pie in the sky. You're talking about getting dark money out. That's sure, that might be a good idea, but the Supreme Court said no. So, I mean, what are we going to do? And then getting money out, oh, come on, that's extreme. No, what's extreme is the current system. Our elections are bought in this country. That's why we have an oligarchy, Chris. It's because billionaires and corporations buy our politicians, then get favorable policy. Why do you think it is that, for example, 63% of Americans want Medicare for all and we don't get it? Why is that? Over 90% of Americans want a universal background check on guns and we don't get it. 58% of Americans want free college and we don't get it. Only 17% of Americans still want to be in Afghanistan, but we're still in Afghanistan. Why do you think that is, Chris? Because the moneyed interest, they're doing what the moneyed interest wants. 80% of Americans want to raise the minimum wage, and the politicians haven't raised the minimum wage. Why is that, Chris? Because the money in the system. The extreme system is what we have right now. But he looks at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez like, oh, so naive. Why don't you understand that the status quo is what it is? Why are you trying to make the system better? Ugh, gross. And then finally, the classic, he does this all the time. He did it in an interview recently with Bernie Sanders. Oh, you sure do want to spend a lot of my tax money now, don't you? It's expensive. How do we pay for it? Donald Trump and Mike Pence just announced a motherfucking Space Force, a new branch of the military, in space. Did anybody say, oh, I can't afford this? This is stupid pie in the sky, fucking toddler-like thinking. Nobody said it. And by the way, it's not like they brought it up and they were like, okay, now let's debate it. They brought it up and they were like, we are doing the Space Force. And the dumbasses in establishment media were like, I guess we're doing the Space Force. Anyway, sounds like a good idea. Isn't that going to be awesome, guys? That's going to be awesome. So like Alexandria points out, giant tax cuts for the rich that blow $1 trillion hole in the deficit. No talk about deficit spending at all. None. No talk about, oh my God, can we afford this? I don't understand. Corporate welfare every year, $80 billion a year go to the big banks as corporate welfare. $1 trillion bailout of Wall Street that just happened not that long ago. Endless war, $7 trillion when all is said and done in Iraq. $7 trillion. What does he have to say? We're trained to not bring up the cost when it's stuff like that because we're just supposed to grandfather that into the way our system works. You can't question defense spending because we love the troops. The troops. I support our troops. This is the ideology. This is the mindset. He was trained to be a good little establishment bitch boy, and that's what he's doing. And so whenever it's for you, education, healthcare, you can't afford it. You're so naive. Fucking unicorn fairy dust. So idealistic. Grow up. Grow up and accept the status quo exactly as it is. Jesus, come on. They pay me well, and that's all that matters. This is what's going on inside his mind, man. It's subconscious. It's not on purpose. But he's totally drunk the establishment Kool-Aid, and he's clueless about it. Even to the point where he brings up like, oh, Vermont tried to do single payer and they couldn't even get it done there. Why, Chris? Why do you think that is? Because of a concerted establishment effort to get them to not do it. Because the for-profit health insurance companies were going to fuck them over if they did it. That's why. Because it hurts their bottom line. The funny thing is, as he accuses Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the subtext of everything he's saying is, you're so naive. But you're the naive one. You don't even understand how giant, organized, moneyed interests, organized capital, how they can impact elections and impact government for favorable outcomes for their own pockets. You don't even understand that. You're bringing up that Vermont couldn't get Medicare for all in their state, a single-payer system in their state. You're using that as evidence that, oh, the single-payer systems can't work. Every other developed country has a single-payer system. Every other one. We have Medicare in this country. That ranks way more popular than our private system. Why? Because it's better. Even the VA, which everybody loves to shriek about the problems of the VA, even that ranks better than our private system. But he's just, all of the evidence already backs up his establishment position. That's what he just believes. You know, he doesn't even understand that there's counter evidence to it. And then again, as she points out, even according to a Koch-funded study, this saves, about $1 trillion over a decade? I originally said $300 billion. It turns out it's more than that. So even according to a right-wing funded study, Medicare for All saves $1 trillion, and he still framed it as, you sure do want to spend a lot of my tax money, don't you? Well, you sure want to spend a lot more of your own money on healthcare, don't you? Because if you're saying I don't want to do Medicare for All, I want to do the system we currently have, you're spending more money and you're getting worse health outcomes, and 30 million Americans are uninsured, and up to 45,000 die because they don't have basic health care, and we pay double. So he doesn't understand anything, but he just casually buys into a right-wing framing. And he's not even correct when he says, oh, you want to spend a lot of my money. No, she's actually proposing that we save money and cover everybody. And if you gave a shit to do even a little bit of homework, you would fucking know that. But you don't. But that's okay, because that's why you're in the position you're in. Because of what your last name is. Nepotism. That's why Cuomo's there. Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York. Obviously, Andrew Cuomo is the governor of New York right now. Cuomo's last name is big in politics, especially in New York. That's why you are where you are, because your last name and because you're willing to serve the establishment. Shame on you.